It's when everybody is talking just freely that you get the most honest situation coming out of their mouths, honest take. And that's what we saw on Tuesday when Cole Kublik had this to say about Georgia. He started talking about the schedule at first of Georgia, and then he goes on to talk about the Dogs, saying their road schedule is something else. I want to say this about Georgia's schedule quickly before we go too far into it. This is where things get tricky when we start talking about schedules. If you take the Georgia logo off the schedule and put just about any other team in college football on it, we're talking about it the way that we talk about the Gators schedule. He said the reason we don't do that is because Georgia and what they've been the last 3 years and how dominant they've been and the talent they have, that is a ridiculously difficult schedule that they probably will not get the credit for at any point this season and that they deserve. So Cole is one of the and Greg McElroy does this too. They definitely. I don't always agree with Greg. I'll say that with Cole Kublik, I find myself in his camp often. He's exactly correct about this. But those two guys are certainly thinkers about the game. Matt Massich going to be put in that category as well. But the giving credit part is an important statement that he's saying there. That is a ridiculously tough schedule that Georgia probably will not get the credit for at any point in time this season that they deserve. So he's just teeing up that, to me, now he can speak for himself and he does. My suspicion is he's talking about that versus what the Big Ten schools are going to deal with. Because, if we're being intellectually honest, the best SEC schools are going to play each other. They're not going to play, with the exception of Texas, they're not going to play Michigan. They're not going to play Ohio State. They're going to play Washington, who, I don't know, but they're not going to play Oregon. So the sort of the four power Big Ten schools, Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, and Penn State this year. The SEC schools, there's going to be one of those that plays them, and that's Texas, and it's a transitional SEC school. Georgia will be playing Texas. They also play Alabama. They play Ole Miss. Those three games, all on the road. They open with Clemson, who is not the national power they once were, but they still have that residual sawdust. So it's still hanging out. But my suspicion is Georgia does not go undefeated in the regular season. We'll see. But, I don't think it's out of the question that they do. But his point is, even if they go, say, 11-1, 10-2 in the regular season, they won't get credit for it because, they're going to go on the road to play Kentucky. They do not play Mizzou this past year. But when you look at the schedule, we never know what the schedule will become. That's another problem, thinking about Kentucky and Missouri this past season. Those were two top 25 matchups in Athens. One of them was borderline top 10. Or I think Ole Miss was top 10. Well, we didn't know Ole Miss, Missouri, and Kentucky would all be ranked in the top 25 when they played them. We certainly did not know that Missouri and Ole Miss would be top 10 teams by the time of the season. And Georgia played 10. Has 3, hard enough for me to say. They have 3 top 10 wins in the season in 2023. They play challenging schedule. And when Cole talks about how they won't get credit, we'll see. I mean, part of the hesitancy for me about giving credit is that 2 years ago now, it was a fact that Tennessee was the number one team in college football playoff rankings when they came to Athens, and they got completely, they got buzzsawed. I mean, that game was not close. They shouldn't have been number one. It should have been Georgia. But the drumbeat from David Pollack, from other people in the media, I don't know why Tennessee was ranked number one. If it's just that they beat Alabama, that's not enough in my opinion. But, because you had seen Georgia buzzsaw Oregon. They had destroyed South Carolina. Like the way they were beating teams, Auburn, they were not just like, well, we're going to win. No, they destroyed people. And some of them were, decent teams. South Carolina was ranked when they beat them. Obviously, Oregon was. And the way they beat Oregon was insane. So by the end of the season, if you want to call it the end of the season, a lot of times the committee gets it wrong. They got it wrong in the Final Four this year. Georgia should have been in there, just what it is. And, if you're telling me there were 4 teams better than Georgia, you're wrong, because there weren't. There was a team that beat Georgia, and they belonged in there too. But there were not 4 teams better than Georgia. There just weren't. So the committee can get it wrong, and they're good at that. I mean, it's very possible Ohio State should not have been in 2022. I'd have to go back and look. It would have been Alabama. I mean, I don't know. But in terms of getting the credit, that's not as big a problem as it's been in the past, because now you have, fortunately or unfortunately, probably unfortunately, you have 12 teams in this thing now. And, as a person who consumes a lot of sports on television, that 12, man, that's a lot. That's a lot of teams. But you saw in European soccer, they don't just have champions. They have Europa, and now they have a club deal underneath that. It's like people want it. They want to see it. And the diehards, the people who are, I'm a college football fan and like they're destroying the sport. You sound like baseball people in the 90s, and you see where baseball is now. Baseball doesn't matter in any way. I think you have to grow. You have to do things that elevate your sport. And the 12 is not the right number. Let me just say that right now. But it is. And I guarantee you that when, Ole Miss is hosting Penn State, that will be a game that on a Friday night, a lot of people will watch that. 15 million, 12 million people will watch that game. I say more like 12. That's a lot of people. I mean, that's a lot of people. It's right in the holidays. It's going to be a big thing. But, and Georgia could be in a situation where they're hosting a game. I don't see Georgia going on the road. If that's what Cole's talking about, which I don't think he is, then he's wrong. Because these guys, I mean, at some point they're going to lose, 2 games in the regular season. But the thing about that is they could lose 2 games in this regular season and still be the SEC champions and then go to the quarterfinals. Or whatever the math is. I think it's quarterfinals. What's going to be really, I think, let me spit this out too. What's going to be really important is Georgia could, in week 1, beat the ACC champion. And in theory, in week 4, they could beat the SEC champion. And not be and themselves not be the SEC champions. It could be that they win 2, defeat 2 conference champions, not at home, not be a conference champion, and still not be a top 4 seed. Because why? They're not a conference champion. So we got to get that part out. Now, I may be speaking from ignorance here, but I'm pretty sure I'm not, that the conference champions are going straight to the quarterfinals. That's wrong. That's wrong. If I'm wrong here, someone could correct me, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. That will elevate the ACC championship and the Big 12 championship to matter a lot, because teams like, Arizona playing Oklahoma State, like those are not top 4 teams. They have no business being in that discussion. And one of them will certainly get into the playoff and could get significant buys for playing in a weaker conference. That's got to go away, unless I'm wrong, which I'm pretty sure I'm not. I hope I'm wrong. But Georgia, when you look around at everybody's schedule, Texas, Bama, Georgia, LSU, no one was spared. They all got really tough schedules, and it's just what it is. I mean, it is unavoidable now. Everyone is playing, because the league is so hard, everybody has got these brutal games. I mean, here's Alabama coming into this thing. They're playing at Wisconsin, Georgia, Tennessee on the road, Missouri, LSU, Oklahoma, and Auburn. Now, they should win most of those games. I'm just saying there's 7 games they could lose. You look at, I'll skip Florida, Georgia, Clemson, at Kentucky, Alabama, Texas, Ole Miss, Tennessee. Those are all games Georgia could lose. Those 6 games. Yes, I skipped Florida. Yes, I skipped Auburn. It's wild out there. Look at LSU, USC, USC. I do not trust LSU, but anyway, USC, UCLA at home, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Alabama, Florida, Oklahoma, all very difficult games. And then I will add that Texas is playing at Michigan. They play Oklahoma before they play Georgia. They play the Gators at home. No, I'm not going to mention that one. Arkansas on the road for sure. Kentucky at home for sure. Texas A&M on the road for sure. These are all challenging schedules. No one is avoiding anything here. Oklahoma, I'd really watch it, man, because this it could get jumpy right out of the gate. Houston week 2, Tennessee week 4, at Auburn. That's not going to be like going to Texas Tech. Texas and Dallas, they host Carolina, who they should beat. Ole Miss, Missouri, Alabama, LSU. There's a lot of games that Oklahoma's got to worry about. But, you know, to get back to Cole's point, Clemson, Tennessee Tech, Kentucky, Bama, Auburn State, Texas, Florida, Ole Miss, Tennessee, UMass, Georgia Tech. If Georgia can get to the Tennessee game or get out of it with a loss or fewer, they're in the playoff. So they don't need to worry about a lot of different stuff. But it is a challenging schedule. And the bad part is that, you know, they're on the road for so many of these. At Kentucky. Well, Clemson, which will be in Atlanta. That's a home game. It's not in Athens. Kentucky and Lexington. Bama and Tuscaloosa. You got Texas and Austin. And then Ole Miss and Oxford. I mean, those are tricky, tough, difficult road games. Georgia's going to have to figure out how to play well all the time to get where they want to go this fall. Thanks for watching.